excuse me, to speak in support of the motion today, and I wish to thank Cath and my colleague Sean Kenny for putting this together. And I want to focus in particular, Minister, on the section of the motion, and it's going to be repeated a number of times, I know, but it notes that the unprecedented increase in construction costs, rising costs of materials and the shortage of skilled labour in Ireland is putting the cost of these upgrades and essential works beyond the reach of most of the recipients of such grant assistance. And even the most partisan of government supporters will surely recognise that there are major problems associated with soaring costs of construction, upgrades and essential works. It's my view that many of the actions taken by successive governments have been the catalysts for these problems being worsened. On the one hand, government made it more difficult for people to access credit, almost too difficult in many cases, and on the other hand, government made it more difficult for builders to build houses. This was done through a dysfunctional planning system and imposing onerous conditions on builders. When all of the associated ingredients are added into the mix, the result has been the creation of a serious mess. Often, when the discussion is about the mess in housing, we focus on the plight of first-time buyers, but this motion allows us the opportunity to also highlight the plight faced by many others caught up in the housing debacle. There are many people across the country who rely on grant assistance to upgrade and repair their homes. There are usually targeted supports to assist those who, for a variety of valid reasons, may not be able to fund such work on their own homes. The first part of our motion mentions a number of examples: the Housing Aid for Older People grant, HAP, Mobility Aid grants, MAG, and the Housing Adaptation grant for people with a disability, HAG, to enable people to live independently in their own homes for longer. One of the main aims of this motion is to get the government to review the level of grant funding for these schemes and to bring them into line with the pace of cost increases. These grants were originally designed with thresholds which allowed the homeowner to reasonably hope of being able to complete the necessary works. Now, the cost of the works has increased by so much now that in many cases the grants are now ineffective in enabling the homeowner to proceed with the work, and because of the level of own funding required, that has just become unrealistic and out of the reach of many. We also have in many cases significant wait times for people to get grant approval in much of the country. However, I'm glad to report that this is not an issue in my own Wexford constituency. The section of Wexford County Council is very much on top of the issue. However, it seems the unacceptable waiting times have become the norm for customer services among state departments in recent years. The HSE have waiting lists so long that they don't even know themselves what the actual numbers are. Young Leo, whom I had here, the 9-year-old who is a wheelchair user from Wicklow, had his application for a wheelchair sitting on a desk for 9 weeks before it was dealt with. The passport service has to be renamed to reflect the slow speed of its express service. The local authority housing lists make for grim reading, and the queues last weekend in Dublin Airport all display a further example of incompetence and lack of accountability in state or semi-state organisations. Both the prohibitive cost and the length of waiting lists around the country has many obvious consequences for those in need of housing supports. If the work doesn't get done in a timely fashion, this may result in more accidents in the home, more time in hospital, greater reliance on the already under pressure home care sector, and earlier entry into nursing homes. All of these things are harmful for the person and their families, but also place a higher burden on the resources of the state. Reviewing thresholds and increasing the amounts available under the grant schemes could very well be the stitch in time that saves 9 for so many people. As stated in the motion, Ireland is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and this places an onus on signatories to ensure the equal right of all persons with disabilities to live in the community, with choices equal to others and the opportunity to choose their place of residence and where and with whom they live on an equal basis with others, and are not obliged to live in a particular living arrangement. The other area of the motion which I want to highlight is for the government to allow discretion for people with disabilities to ensure that the grant meets the individual needs of the disabled person to live independently. And also, Minister, very important, that a discretion in general be granted at the level of senior housing officer or a director of services. a senior staff officer at local level, because all too often when dealing with state grants, the criteria does not allow for the decision makers to use their discretion, and there are loads of hard-working, skilled people working on the government's behalf dealing with grant applications, and we need to adjust the system to allow in certain circumstances these officials more leeway to use their judgment to best meet the needs of the applicant. And if I may give an instance where this discretion could have been exercised but it weren't allowed for in the legislation. An elderly couple in my own constituency in their mid-80s last December, their boiler packed up, and in applying for a grant they were told that they could not start the work or the repairs until an inspection had taken place. Now, at the time, because of COVID, the earliest inspection was 6 weeks. Now, clearly they could not wait as they had no heating in the house, and subsequently they didn't qualify for the grant as the inspection took place post-works, and the monies had to be borrowed from the local credit union to be paid for, and not the aim of these grants, Minister. And I think, if we look at the discretion at that level, it should cure ills such as this. So I just want to say I'd be hopeful that this will result in more people being able to remain and live in comfort and safety in their own homes and help achieve the greatest value for money possible. Overall, I do believe that the motion is brought about by the increase in costs, and that I do hope it will receive universal support across the House. Thank you.